After leaving the house, the goo can sometimes transform into the shape of a fireball, flying around in the mountains and forests. Sometimes it can transform into a black shadow, often frequenting the houses in the village. The time when the goo's magical power is greatest is at dusk when the sun is just setting. At this time, the yang energy is fading but not yet completely gone, and the yin energy is beginning to rise, creating a harmony between yin and yang. Each time after the goo returns home, it will still stay in the pot. The owner does not need to feed it anything else. The benefit of raising goo is to borrow its spiritual energy to make whatever the owner does very smooth. If the owner wants to do business, borrowing the goo's spiritual energy can make the business prosperous, with one capital yielding 10,000 profits. If the owner wants to become an official, borrowing the goo's spiritual energy can help them rise to the clouds, achieving fame and status. This is also the reason why, although goo was once strictly banned, it still found a way to be passed down through the ages. On the other hand, if by some carelessness the goo harms someone and it is discovered, and a high-level sorcerer is invited to confiscate the goo, the owner who raised the goo will encounter much bad luck, with disasters happening one after another, even affecting the lives of their family. The family that raises goo, besides being respectful on ordinary days, must hold a grand sacrificial ceremony for the goo on the 24th of June of the lunar calendar every year. This ceremony lasts for 3 days, from the 24th to the 26th. During these days, the owner must use a live pig, a chicken, and a goat each day, then cook them. At night, when it's dark outside, the whole family chops up the pig, goat, and chicken and puts them inside the pot. The goo's appetite is very large and very demanding. The goo is very sensitive to the presence of strangers, so during the sacrifice to the goo, outsiders are absolutely not allowed to participate, nor should it be revealed to outsiders. Otherwise, the outsider will be attacked by the goo, endangering their life. According to many ancient documents, the method of harming people with goo has existed and been passed down in folklore for a very long time. In the oracle bone inscriptions from the Yin dynasty, there are characters like if there is a toothache, only the goo is to be feared. In the Jolie Autumn Officials Saiku, it says, they are in charge of removing insect poisons, using incantations to ward off calamities, and using herbs to eliminate them. Zhang Xian's commentary says, insect poison is a type of insect that causes disease and harms people. The Book of Laws and Regulations says, whoever makes insect poison to harm people or spreads insect poison will be beheaded and their head displayed. Through Zhang Xian's words, we can see that the art of using insect poison existed in the Han Dynasty, but the specific method was probably not recorded in books for fear of it being widely spread, to avoid becoming a disseminator. During the Tang Dynasty, the art of using insect poison was still strictly forbidden. Volume 18 of the Tang Code and Commentary, Robbery and Theft, stipulates that whoever raises insect poison or spreads insect poison will be executed by hanging. The commentary explains that there are many types of insect poison, and it is difficult to investigate them all. The worship of evil cults cannot be fully known. However, the Geographical Records, Part 2 of the Book of Sui, reveals to us the basic method of creating and using insect poison. The book says, whoever swallows the goo into their stomach, it will eat their 5 internal organs. When that person dies, their family property will fall into the hands of the goo's master. If they cannot kill that person within 3 years, the person who raises the goo will have to clean up their own mess. Their descendants will be passed down forever, but they are called ghosts. In reality, they are not. Since the rebellion of Ho Jing, most of those who harbored insect poison have been eliminated. The insect poison has no master, so those that fly and run on the road have all died. The use of goo is often quite effective in eliminating opponents, and there is almost no known way to cure it. A person who is afflicted with goo is as good as holding a death sentence in their hands. This is the terrifying aspect of goo, because the victim's symptoms are not simply those of poisoning or a common illness. Besides its deadly poison, goo is also a creature with great supernatural power, with intelligence and mysterious actions. The victim has to fight against the poison attacking their body and also endure the harassment and attacks of the goo itself. Throughout many dynasties in Chinese history, there have been no small number of tragedies related to goo magic. For the use of goo magic, raising goo, the feudal dynasties of China all considered it a serious crime and punished it severely. The story of Gongsun Ao in the Book of Han says, Ao was a minor official who deserved the death penalty, but faked his death and hid among the people for 5 or 6 years. Later, he was discovered and arrested again. Because his wife practiced sorcery, his whole family was beheaded. The story of Zhao Ponu, also in this book, records he lived among the Xiongnu for 10 years and then fled to Han with Crown Prince Ngua. Later, he was accused of practicing sorcery and his entire family was exterminated. The robbery and theft law in the Tang Code and commentary records, whoever raises any creature to use as sorcery to harm people will be executed by hanging. The Great Qing laws and regulations in the criminal law section also clearly states, whoever makes or hides poisonous insects or poison, both the user and the hider will be beheaded. These laws prove that the Chinese government from ancient times to the present has understood very well the power and evil of using insect poison, and the laws also show their high determination to eradicate this plague among the people. The cases related to insect poison and sorcery were recorded most frequently during the Han Dynasty. Among them, the most famous are 2 cases related to the royal family during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han. In the past, Emperor Wu married Empress Chun Ajiao, the daughter of his aunt, Princess Liu Piao, before he reached adulthood. The affection between the two was strong in the beginning. Emperor Wu of Han often visited Ajiao's palace after court every day, enjoying loving and intimate days with her. But later, Emperor Wu's feelings for the empress gradually faded, partly because there were countless beautiful concubines in the palace, and partly because after living together for many years, the two still could not have a child. In 139 BC, Emperor Wu of Han fell in love with the beautiful Wei Zifu. This made Chun Ajiao and the Chun family extremely angry, and they tried every way to assassinate the beautiful Wei. From then on, Empress Chun began to step onto the path of dark arts. She continuously drank many secret remedies in the hope of getting pregnant, and at the same time, she asked a shaman, Chu Fu, to help her get pregnant and curse Wei Zifu. In 130 BC, someone accused Empress Chun of using sorcery and charms. The matter was exposed. The case ended with Chun Ajiao losing her title of empress and being imprisoned in the Cold Palace. Chu Fu was executed, and 300 related people also met the same fate. 8 years later, Emperor Wu of Han once again investigated a sorcery case. This time, the accused were the Prime Minister Gongsun, he and his wife. Later, the Gongsun family suffered the disaster of extermination, involving 2 princesses. It didn't stop there. The case continued to involve Crown Prince Liu Ju and Wei Zifu, who had by then been made empress. The tragic outcome of the case led to the suicides of Crown Prince Liu Ju and Empress Wei. 3 other princes and 1 princess were also executed. Today, the art of using insect poison is still passed down in folklore. However, genuine sorcerers rarely use sorcery to harm others or themselves. Therefore, incidents related to sorcery in general and insect poison in particular are not many. It is for this reason that the old stories about insect poison and sorcery arouse more curiosity in modern people like us today, and those stories are covered in even more mysterious veils that are difficult to be answered satisfactorily to satisfy the curiosity of the masses. However, in medicine, there are still sometimes cases of illness that resemble poisoning, but doctors, with the most modern technology, cannot find the cause and are helpless to watch the patient slowly rot and die from the disease. No one can give a specific and accurate explanation for such cases, and their deaths remain mysteries forever. On the whole, goo is quite terrifying. However, basically, a person attacked by goo is just like being poisoned, a poison with no cure, and they're almost certain to receive a death sentence. However, There's another dark art passed down in folklore that makes the afflicted live a life worse than death, wishing for death just to be released. That terrifying dark art is called the Meow Cat Curse. It is also a dark art in sorcery. If you're interested in talismans and charms, you're probably no stranger to the name Kumanthong. Kumanthong are human-shaped dolls made from parts of dead people or from the dried bodies of children. Those who raise Kumanthong will give them milk every day, dress them in new clothes, play with toys, and take care of them like a child. Kumanthong is believed to have magical powers that can hurt and help the person who raises it. Or even more darkly, Kumanthong can be used to cause horrific disasters for those the owner wants to harm. However, this is seen as a double-edged sword. When the person who raises Kumanthong does not meet his needs or does something to displease this child, they will have to go through days no different from hell, just like those they had harmed before, and not a few of them have had to resort to suicide to be released. As scary as it is, many people today still seek out different sources to buy and raise Kumanthong in their homes with the desire to get promoted and get rich, without knowing that they are raising a real demon. And the Meow Cat Curse is a type of magic similar to Kumanthong, likened to the cat version of Kumanthong by the Chinese. Although the vessel is cats, their danger and terror are no less than the stories about this dark art that have been passed down to this day and have caused horrific obsessions for not a few people in the ethnic minority areas of China, especially the Miao people, the creators of the Meow Cat Curse. Another frightening aspect of the Meow Cat Curse is that the process of making the curse is not difficult for those who are trained. First, sorcerers and shamans will raise cats until the chosen cat is old enough. They will be killed and imbued with dark arts on their corpses with magic and spells of the sorcerer. Evil spirits will come and reside in the bodies of these unfortunate cats. These evil spirits will resurrect the cat, but with a great, dark, and extremely terrifying power. The appearance of the cats at this time also changes noticeably. They no longer have the gentle and cute look of the cats you usually keep at home. They will become full of wildness, their eyes sharp like a predator stalking its prey. Their fangs grow long. Their breath smells of the stench of blood and corpses. They will obey the commands of the sorcerer. The sorcerers will raise these demons in the guise of cats to use them to harm unfortunate people. These cat demons are fed blood and raw meat daily, or even corpses. They are strictly managed by the sorcerers to prevent them from running out and harming people on their own, which would attract the attention of the public, especially high-level mages. And when the sorcerer finds a target to sow disaster, the cats quietly in the night find their victim. Under the ghostly power of the evil spirits, they afflict the unfortunate people with diseases and invisible disasters, as if signing a death warrant on them. When someone is hit by the cruel curse of the Meow Cat Curse, they will show symptoms of a strange illness. First, their limbs feel sore and numb, making it difficult to move. Then the pain gradually spreads to the body and then into the heart. At this time, they feel excruciating pain throughout their body, as if 1,000 needles are piercing them. Inside their body, their internal organs gradually rot and decompose as the Meow demon slowly approaches and eats the internal organs. Outside the body, the hands and feet become difficult to control, necrotic, and rot gradually from the bottom up. From the necrotic wounds, the strong smell of a corpse emerges, dyed a dark black color like charcoal. Finally, this person will vomit blood and die quickly before anyone can understand the cause of the strange illness they have. But that is not the most frightening aspect of the Meow Cat Curse. Besides the physical pain, the victims of this dark art also have to endure terrible mental torture. They will always feel a sense of dread, a fear of the painful and excruciating illness, a fear of the invisible ghostly obsessions that haunt them day after day. This makes them unable to eat or sleep well, and they gradually drift away. This pain, both physical and mental, makes the victims go through the last days of their lives more miserable than in hell. Perhaps finding death for them is truly a release. On the other hand, the Meow Cat Curse is not only used for revenge and cursing opponents to death. For many people, it is also used to pray for wealth, fame, and fortune. However, this good fortune and wealth must also be faced with the lives of others. If the curse is successful, all the good fortune and wealth of the afflicted person will be transferred to the one who cast the curse in some mysterious way. And the afflicted person themselves will be slowly eaten by the Meow demon from the inside out and die a resentful death, as described. To put it simply, this use of the Meow Cat curse is like an exchange with a demon. Give me that person's wealth, fame, and riches, and I will let you eat him. As powerful as it is, using the Meow Cat curse also has a significant price to pay. The Meow Cat curse is originally wandering evil spirits invited by sorcerers to reside in the body of a cat to help them. These exchanges with demons have never had a good outcome. They have great power and are very cruel. Therefore, controlling these demons to make them work for oneself is also a difficult story for sorcerers. If the Meow Cat curse is displeased and turns against its master, it will attack the curse caster and their relatives, causing them to have symptoms similar to being cursed by someone. The wealth and good fortune of their children will also disappear, bringing bad luck to the master's family. These demons are quite vengeful and do not know reason. Therefore, the most important thing for sorcerers is to meet and control their demands at an acceptable and manageable level. Because their demands sometimes increase over time. The more they're nurtured, the stronger they become. And the stronger they become, the more bizarre and difficult to meet their demands become. For example, instead of eating raw meat, blood, and corpses, they want to eat living things, even humans. To satisfy them, the sorcerer has to harm more people, and this only lengthens their list of crimes. Using the Meow Cat curse to harm people is to cut off one's own path of good fortune and to dig one's own grave. There is something strange here. The animals in nature that are considered symbols of evil and cold-bloodedness are countless. We can name a few like wolves, tigers, lions, spiders, etc. Why don't people use those animals as hosts for evil spirits? Why are the gentle and cute cats we keep at home the chosen animal? It turns out that everything has a reason. Whether in the East or the West, cats have always been considered a spiritual creature, standing between the two worlds, the yin and yang realms. Some ancient religions believe that cats are noble souls, companions, or guides for humans, and that cats are very wise, but because they cannot speak, they cannot influence human decisions. For example, in ancient Egypt, cats were sacred and divine animals, worshipped and respected by the people. When a family's cat died, a funeral was held and their bodies were mummified like humans. The famous Sphinx was also based on the image of a cat. In Islam, although there are no sacred animals, some books record that the Prophet Muhammad had a pet cat named Muetza. The Prophet loved cats so much that he would rather not wear his coat than disturb a cat sleeping on it. Or in Northern Europe, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility in Norse mythology is described as riding a chariot pulled by cats. Or in the folklore of the Jewish people and Babylonian civilization, the black cat is a symbol of a snake coiled by the fireplace. In Scotland, a black cat appearing on the porch is a sign of prosperity to come. So fishermen's wives keep black cats in their homes with the belief that they can prevent any bad things from happening to their loved ones while at sea. On the other hand, many cultures have a negative view of cats, typically the belief that a black cat crossing a person's path will bring bad luck, or the story that cats are assistants to witches, helping them increase their power. This led to the widespread hunting of cats in Europe during the Middle Ages, or a more frightening phenomenon that is often told in Vietnamese folklore, the phenomenon of Queen Nap Trang, demon entering the corpse. When a person dies, during the enshrouding, if a black cat jumps over the corpse, it will cause the corpse to rise and act strangely. Many documents even record that a Queen Nap Trang can move and attack people around it. Therefore, at funerals, people are very wary of the appearance of cats, especially black cats. In one way or another, many different cultures from east to west believe that cats are a sacred and rather mysterious animal, capable of connecting us with supernatural forces. If you have a cat at home, you will notice that these cats sometimes have rather strange behaviors, such as arching their backs, their eyes widening, and growing when looking at dark corners or empty spaces. And have you ever wondered about the sudden strangeness of your pet cat at home? It is very possible that they are seeing and reacting to things that we cannot see. This is very likely the main reason why cats are chosen as the vessel to practice the meow cat curse. For those lucky enough to discover the meow cat curse before it has deeply penetrated their internal organs, it can be cured. The method of dispelling the curse requires a person with high magical powers, using a mixture of licorice castor oil plants with a croton seed and chi shao, then using magical arts to resolve it for the afflicted person. However, because the curse dispeller has used their own strength to fight against the power of the evil spirit, they themselves are also quite harmed. A mild case would be getting sick, a severe case would affect the good fortune of their family, and they could even suffer many disasters affecting their lives. Because of the high price to pay when dispelling the meow cat curse, arts similar to goo poison. The method of making qingxi dew is also related to poisonous insects. The insects that the sorcerers use are called si. They are beetles that are born from spoiled grains and food. Si is believed to have mystical powers and a rather strong poison, so they were used to make qingxi dew. According to the history of its origin and development, the methods of using si in the pre-Qing period were mostly naturally occurring poisonous insects. They were not created by humans for the purpose of harming others. Over time, sorcerers began to research and find ways to use and command these poisonous insects. Gradually, the technique of controlling poisonous insects, qingxi, developed, and people could use them to harm others at will. According to the research of scholars, in the Central Plains during the Warring States period, there were already people who used poisonous insects and taught how to use poisonous insects to harm people. The stories about the use of qingxi poison in the remote mountainous areas of ancient China are always told with a mysterious veil, especially since the people are still quite afraid when they mention the phrase qingxi dew, besides using naturally occurring poisonous insects and refining them to make them do their bidding. There are also many legends that record another method of making qingxi poison. That is, first people collect poisonous insects and put them in a pot. The poisonous insects will eat each other. The survivor is the strongest and will be used to make si, to harm people. This method is quite similar to the way of making poisonous insects. The key point that creates the difference between the poison being called a poisonous insect or qingxi dew is in the incantations to guide the supernatural forces to control the poisonous insects according to the will of the person who raises the SI. When researching the question of why there is a similarity between the method of making poisonous insects and Sanxingdui, the materials we have are not many. One reason is that the use of these types of dark arts was banned for a very long time by the Chinese court. Another reason is that the sorcerers who inherited this method of making them are less visible today than before. Here, we would like to offer a few hypotheses as follows. First hypothesis: different methods of using poisonous insects and Sanxingdui were developed in parallel in many places but had similar uses. Later, with the cultural exchange between regions, for the convenience of classification and naming, people collectively called them Sanxingdui. This may prove that the knowledge of the Miao people about dark arts combined with poisonous insects is very profound, and the use of these dark arts is not difficult for the general public. Each person used poison in unique ways, which are then grouped into different classifications for convenience. Second hypothesis: because the use of Sanxingdui in ancient times was widespread and popular, sorcerers developed many different methods. In that development process, many sorcerers came to know many different dark arts at the same time, such as both poisonous insects and a Miao cat curse. Thanks to that, they borrowed ways of making and using poison for many different purposes. This proves that the Miao people in the past were very proficient in the use of dark arts, and especially the transmission of these methods in folklore was very common. The Miao people today believe that there are many types of SI, such as snake SI, ant SI, sparrow SI, turtle SI. A hungry SI will immediately attack its master, that is, the person who uses the SI. When the SI master releases it to harm someone, they will say, "See, go find person X to eat. Don't bother me." This incantation proves that raising SI is also a method that harms both others and oneself. Most people who raise SI must have a specific purpose for using it. Otherwise, they will be constantly harassed by the SI, and it will greatly affect their lives. Imagine living in a house full of insects carrying deadly poison, constantly harassing and affecting your life. That would surely make you feel uncomfortable. Those who raise SI themselves must also go through a period of torture before they want to inflict disaster on others. The methods of using SI are also varied. Among them, one of the most commonly used methods is to have the SI parasitize a woman. The Miao people call this custom Chao Gui, grass demon, which refers to demons that live as parasites on humans like moss and grass live on their hosts. The unfortunate women who have SI, living as parasites on them, are called Chao Gui women. Many Miao women believe that SI can only attach to women and is transmitted to the female of the next generation, not to men. If a young man marries a girl with SI without the parents' consent, the daughter born will have SI transmitted from her mother, and so on from generation to generation. However, some Chinese books say that the person who transmits SI does not necessarily have to be a woman, but that men can also become SI transmitters. So why do the Miao people believe that only women have SI? The answer to this may be related to the Han Miao cultural tradition. According to this, the witchcraft of the Han people only distinguishes between good and evil, not between men and women. The Miao people in southern China, in the process of transitioning from a matriarchal to a patriarchal system, had a very fierce distinction between men and women. This affected the witchcraft of the Miao people. The male shamans had an orthodox status and became the maintainers of social order. They expressed their dominance over the women in society by having the women carry the poison of tin SI, made anyone who came into contact with a woman afflicted with SI risk becoming a victim themselves. The female sorcerers, who had a place in this matriarchal society, were considered the spreaders of witchcraft. The male sorcerers blamed them for all the natural disasters and enemy invasions. This explains why the concept that women with SI are often poisonous appeared. In fact, both men and women can carry SI, and male and female sorcerers have equal abilities. This is because a rather unique and popular method of using SI that made tin SI dock famous was recorded. The tin SI dock of the Miao people was used as a measure to maintain marital fidelity. When the husband went far away, the wife would set a date for his return and then transmit the SI to him. If the husband was unfaithful and did not return on the appointed date, the poisonous SI would take his life. If he returned on time, the poisonous SI would automatically lose its effect. This was how wives punished unfaithful husbands, a practice that existed for thousands of years. This, if poison still exists today and is considered a very effective measure. Let's not talk about whether using SI on people is good or bad for a moment. Let's look at the use of SI to keep a spouse faithful. If you were in that situation, would you be sad if your spouse went away and didn't come back, but had someone else behind your back? The answer for most would be yes. On the other hand, if you knew that being unfaithful could result in a painful and horrible death for both yourself and your lover, would you dare to go against morality? The answer is probably no. By using Tin Si Dak, a dark art said to harm both oneself and others, the Miao people had a method of creating faith that had immense power for couples whenever they had to be apart. Therefore, whether the use of these dark arts is good or bad sometimes depends on the perspective and how they are used. According to recent investigations, most Miao people still believe in the witchcraft of Tin Si Dak. The people here can list a series of symptoms of people affected by Tin Si poison, with varying degrees of severity. It could be a persistent cough for many days without getting better, after which the patient may cough up blood, their face turning pale, and their body rapidly losing weight. Through research on people believed to be affected by Tin Si poison using modern investigative methods and pathological anatomy, it was found that their internal organs showed signs of strong necrosis, rotting from the inside. In some autopsy samples, insects were even found in the rotting internal organs. When these insects were tested, their species could not be identified. This clinical picture has left many doctors extremely puzzled and has taken much time and ink without finding the cause. The most easily recognizable common point among the dark arts of the Miao people is their excellent ability to harm others. The sorcerers or users only need to identify the victim's identity, and the rest is carried out by supernatural forces using different methods to cause the victim to suffer disasters that are beyond the endurance of a normal person, both physically and mentally. To understand the dark arts of sorcery, we need to believe that there are invisible supernatural forces in this world, forces that sorcerers, by one method or another, can use and control at their will. Many people may think that calling these phenomena dark arts is just for the purpose of scaring others, and that the nature of cases considered to be under a spell are just people who are sick or simply poisoned. Let's analyze the truth behind it. In the case of goo poison, the symptoms of the afflicted person are quite similar to those of simple poisoning. If someone wants to poison another, they usually have to have a way to get close to the victim or to an object the victim often uses or their food and drink. But here, the goo actively seeks out the person to be poisoned. At the very least, this shows that he is aware of his actions. Because if not, the first person to be poisoned would be the one who raised the goo and their family members. However, the fact that the luck of the person who raises the goo improves due to the spiritual energy from the goo cannot be explained from a modern human perspective. As for the Miao cat curse, the symptoms on the victim's body are quite similar to those of the cutaneous form of anthrax, a common infection in warfare caused by the anthrax bacterium. However, a characteristic of anthrax is that the ability to cause systemic disease is not high, and since it is a disease caused by bacteria, it often has an environmental factor. Accordingly, if someone is infected with anthrax, the people around them are also very susceptible because the bacteria exist in the soil and water environment. Another characteristic is that the disease caused by anthrax usually does not have much effect on the victim's mental function. The fact that all the victims experience the same ghostly feelings is almost impossible. The strange feelings that appear in the head can occur when the patient has a high fever, but the manifestation of this is usually that the patient says unrealistic things, not that they have fears and feelings of being threatened as recorded in the documents. And finally, Tin Si Dak, belongs to a more special and more difficult to explain environment for modern medicine. This is because it is impossible to explain why the people who carry Isai have no problems at all, while the people designated by the sorcerer, after coming into contact with a person carrying Isai, suffer from horrible diseases, their internal organs rotting, and they die. If it is explained that the person carrying Isai is immune to the disease they carry, it is also impossible to explain why most of the people who come into contact with the person carrying Isai do not get sick, and they cannot become carriers of the disease, as doctors explain. In other words, there's a special and invisible bond between the Isai and the person who carries it. This bond also cannot be explained by modern medicine today. Another common characteristic among these types of goo poison is that the symptoms of the victims are somewhat similar. That is, the victim's internal organs often rot, and they experience a painful death that almost no one can cure. This can be understood that, in essence, these dark arts use deadly poisons to harm others. The deadly poisons may be nearly the same, so they cause quite similar effects on the victims. What makes them a form of magic is the way these deadly poisons are guided to the victim. Therefore, the frightening aspect of goo poison, the Meow Cat Curse, or Tin Si Doc, is not really in the symptoms and death of the victims. Their frightening aspect lies in the way humans use supernatural forces that cannot be resisted to attack other humans. Therefore, these uses of poison are all classified as dark arts and are banned everywhere. Thanks to these bans, we are not threatened as much today by people who intend to use demons to do shady things and harm people. However, an inevitable law of creation, the law of cause and effect, exists everywhere in life. Using dark arts, making deals with, and relying on evil demons is always a double-edged sword, and both edges are sharp. The people who use charms and dark arts to harm others the most are usually the ones who are most likely to have them backfire on them. The mystical and spiritual powers always have a tendency to be difficult to control due to their wild nature. Therefore, they always have a tendency to want to attack the very person who has trained and commanded them to do harm to others. This is like an inevitable consequence of borrowing the powers of nature, mystical powers, to do things that are against morality. The mystical and supernatural forces that exist around us are not at fault initially and do not cause any harm to the human world, but sorcerers and mages have commanded them, forcing them to harm people in the mortal realm. In the end, no one benefits from a story. The way of heaven is always fair. Furthermore, heaven has the virtue of compassion for life. The very act of a person using dark arts to harm others also causes the good karma accumulated through their lifetimes to be destroyed. Their negative karma accumulates more and more. Therefore, although powerful charms are passed down from generation to generation, avoiding being lost, most sorcerers advise their descendants to absolutely not use them indiscriminately when it is not really necessary. Cultures that have a lot of contact with mystical forces also have similar advice. Mortals should solve their own problems. Do not try to rely on people from the underworld, wandering evil spirits, to harm others and ultimately harm oneself. In any case, the use of witchcraft is still a unique feature of the Miao people in particular and the community of ethnic groups in China in general. Even though witchcraft is always accompanied by stories with a rather creepy and scary supernatural color. In addition, the existence of these witchcraft practices to this day also proves one thing. Outside the world of humans that we perceive every day, there are still many other forces, otherworld with great power and abilities that we humans usually cannot access. They may exist invisibly or may exist in other dimensions that we cannot access. However, they can have an impact, whether good or bad, on our world. Although the application of ancient rituals to harm others is no longer common today, for ordinary people like us, is there any method that can help us prevent attacks and harm from those who borrow the power of demons? The answer, fortunately, is yes. The Buddha once taught that a great saint who has used the practice of giving to become completely liberated, no power in this world can stop them. whether that stopping power comes from kings, from benevolent or malevolent gods, from evil or good immortals, and even from the god of death. According to Buddhism, sowing good thoughts will reap blessings. A person with a Buddha's heart will eliminate all kinds of evil. All religions have gods who are ready to extend a helping hand to their followers when they sincerely believe and practice. Besides, ordinary people do not necessarily have to turn to religions to seek protection. The best method for each person is to constantly accumulate good karma for themselves. A person with virtue is respected and feared by demons. As long as one's heart is as bright as a mirror and not tempted to be clouded, one will naturally avoid disasters from evil forces. This is also almost the deepest philosophy of practice of all religions in the world. And what do you think? Do you think that those supernatural forces out there can be commanded by humans using charms and magic? Is there or is there not someone watching over us from behind and can help or harm us at some point? Please leave your opinions and share them with Vu Trung Nguyen Tui in the comments section below. Among the scientific hypotheses related to life outside of Earth, perhaps the theory of ancient aliens has always received more attention than any other. As we find more and more traces from ancient civilizations, people have more and more reason to believe in that hypothesis. We realize that extraterrestrials did not appear throughout the formation and development of humanity. But if that is true, then why have we always let these guests freely enter and leave our home without any resistance? The reason is that we did not know of their presence, or were not capable of resisting, or perhaps we were forced to ignore these entities. Many people have thought of a hypothesis about deals between humans and extraterrestrial forces. They would come here to take what they need, and in return, we would get knowledge, technology, and above all, the safety of our species. Evidence of such cosmic diplomacy is relatively shown clearly through records of unidentified flying objects appearing through the ages in the civilization of the Chinese region. The deals between humans and extraterrestrials are also the secret that we will uncover today. I wish you a happy 30 minutes with the video, Ancient China, Cosmic Diplomacy Through the Ages. You're looking at Sanxingdui, the most amazing archaeological site of the century, discovered in the late 1920s in China. It has an area of about 12 square kilometers and is located in the city of Guanghan in Sichuan province, China today. Although it was discovered early, the excavation of Sanxingdui was quite slow. It was not until 1934 that the first archaeological team arrived and made noteworthy discoveries. Near the site, they found 3 small mounds shaped like 3 stars, so they named the place Sanxingdui. Although they collected some more bronze, jade, pottery, and stone tools in this excavation, basically they were not very important or groundbreaking artifacts. Due to the political situation at that time, they had to end the expedition hastily. The site was also forgotten. It was not until 1986 that Sanxingdui renewed the attention of the archaeological community. In that expedition, people were amazed to discover thousands of precious artifacts. The Sanxingdui site has changed the perception of the scientific community about ancient Chinese civilization. However, its greatness and grandeur are not what we will discuss today. According to the carbon dating method, the unprecedented artifacts excavated at the Sanxingdui site date back to around 1250 BC. This means that a very, very long time ago, there existed a civilization with a relatively advanced level of science and technology, completely different from our current imagination. Please look here. This artifact is nearly 4 meters tall and was discovered in the same excavation in 1986. With its exquisite design, the bronze tree left an extremely deep impression on anyone who witnessed it. It has a total of 9 branches, and each branch has a flower and a bird at the end. Strangely, the shape of this artifact is exactly the same as the shape of the divine Fusang tree described in the Classic of Mountains and Seas. If you don't know, the Classic of Mountains and Seas is an ancient Chinese book that is a comprehensive record of geography, mythology, and mythical creatures. The appearance of the Fusang tree has led people to question whether what is recorded in the Classic of Mountains and Seas is completely true. And from here, people began to question the connection between Sanxingdui and another advanced alien civilization. We will analyze another piece of evidence to reinforce this suspicion. This bronze statue is also an extremely famous artifact found at the site. Anyone can easily recognize that it is depicting something not human at all. Here we have a very long, cylindrical head, abnormally large eyes compared to the proportions of the face, and two pointed ears pointing backwards. It seems that the people of that time were trying to describe a special species or even a god in their beliefs. Because before Sanxingdui was discovered, people had also made similar hypotheses for the civilizations of Egypt, Maya, and ancient Sumer. The gods in those cultures were also considered to have come from the universe to help humans. It is not out of the question that this also happened in the civilization at Sanxingdui. Initially, the faint connection with extraterrestrials was completely overlooked. However, everything changed after a shocking discovery in June 2022. While cleaning pit number 7 of the Sanxingdui ruins, archaeologists unexpectedly discovered a cultural relic with a strange shape. This cultural relic is mainly made of bronze, with an overall shape like a turtle's back, covered with net-like lines full of mysterious charm. In a deeper study of its production process, the experts conducted an X-ray examination. The results astonished everyone. They found that it actually had signs of being welded. The welded parts were so exquisitely done that there were almost no traces. The earliest patent for welding technology comes from the carbon arc welding method in England in 1885. However, this discovery at Sanxingdui has directly pushed back the historical origin of welding technology by more than 2,000 years, meaning that as early as 4,000 years ago, the Chinese had mastered advanced welding technology, possibly even surpassing modern levels. How did the people of Sanxingdui create it? It doesn't stop there. Through research, the experts also discovered that the newly excavated bronze wares from this place contain phosphorus. If anyone has knowledge of chemistry, they will know that phosphorus is a non-metallic element. It not only speeds up the melting rate of bronze, but also slows down the solidification time of bronze in its liquid state, which is beneficial for casting complex shapes. However, phosphorus was reportedly discovered earliest in 1669. So how did the people of Sanxingdui extract phosphorus more than 4,000 years ago? Where did they learn about its existence and role? At this point, most people are somewhat convinced that the Sanxingdui civilization really did have contact with extraterrestrial beings in the past. And when we connect the links of archaeological evidence together, we will have a story that is relatively consistent with the hypothesis presented at the beginning of the video. First, in ancient times, extraterrestrials set foot on Earth right at Sanxingdui to search for something. Here, they meet the local people who at that time were still a primitive and rudimentary civilization. Even so, that primitive and rudimentary civilization had what they needed. So an exchange took place. The Sanxingdui civilization was taught many advanced scientific knowledge, thus surpassing all other contemporary civilizations. In return, the extraterrestrials also wanted to receive something. What did they need from us? What did a primitive and rudimentary civilization have to exchange with a species that had reached the level of space travel? The answer is humans. That's right, there's only one thing that extraterrestrials could not find anywhere else. They needed humans, individuals who set the standards to serve their own purposes. We, even if we didn't want to, had no other choice but to accept it. If we obediently negotiated with them, it would be a mutually beneficial exchange. If not, perhaps things would be much worse. These exchanges have lasted throughout history, and we have a lot of evidence to say so. I will tell you about the next possible deal that happened during the reign of the most famous emperor in Chinese history, Qin Shi Huang. One of the oldest ancient texts that mentions extraterrestrials relatively clearly is the Shi of China. In this book, there is a passage that mentions a detail describing the contact between extraterrestrials and Qin Shi Huang. In volume 41, the description is as follows. During the reign of Qin Shi Huang, there was a very strange tribe that frequently came and went. They were much taller than ordinary people. Outside their bodies, they were covered with something like bird feathers. These people could walk easily both on land and in water. In the dark, they had a strange treasure that emitted light without using fire. Qin Shi Huang treated this tribe very openly. The emperor even considered them as gods. When asked who they were, Qin Shi Huang only answered with a single sentence: "They are the gods." Through these two short excerpts, the question of whether Qin Shi Huang was related to extraterrestrials has created a fierce debate in the Chinese space research community. Those who support the hypothesis believe that everything will be proven when there is more practical evidence. This evidence will be found at the Great Wall. We certainly don't need to introduce the Great Wall too much, because it is so famous, a magnificent structure stretching tens of thousands of kilometers, requiring advanced construction techniques, as well as an understanding of the meteorology and geology of each region it passes through. How could the Great Wall have been completed with primitive technology and small manpower? There is no more reasonable reason than that he was born with the active help of that strange tribe. Some scientists still cannot believe this hypothesis because, according to them, it is too absurd. Just a few unclear lines of ancient text are not convincing enough. Perhaps we still need more clues. Let's search in the emperor's tomb. In 1965, during the excavation of an ancient tomb in China, archaeologists found a very special sword. When they cleaned the mud off the surface of the sword, it was inscribed with characters stating that this was the sword used by King Gojian of Yu. Gojian lived around 496 BC and was the king of the state of Yu, one of the 5 hegemons at the end of the spring and autumn period in Chinese history. After excavating this precious sword, the Chinese archaeologists at that time dated it to be about more than 2,000 years old. Although it had been underground for more than 2,000 years, the sword was not rusted at all. Not only that, when it was cleaned, its color was still unbelievably perfect. What had kept it in its original state for thousands of years. The reason why the sword of Gojian was not rusted is because its surface was covered with a layer of chromium metal. Chromium is used today to enhance corrosion resistance and polish surfaces. However, this metal is very hard and difficult to extract. Furthermore, the melting point of chromium is as high as 1907 degrees Celsius. It was not until the 20th century that humans learned to apply chromium for plating other metals to increase corrosion resistance. Therefore, 2,000 years ago, the method of chromium plating was truly impossible. If it appeared so clearly, then who owned this method? It doesn't stop there. In 1994, the Chinese excavated another part of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, located north of Mount Li, in Lintong County, Shaanxi Province. When they dug to pit number 2, they discovered a series of swords made of bronze in the tomb. The swords were all 86 centimeters long and still extremely sharp. When measured, it was found that the blade had an area as small as a human hair. Like the sword of Gojian, although it had been buried underground for approximately 2,000 years, when the mud on top was wiped away, it became as shiny as new. Many scientists have said that if it is true that technology was so developed in such a distant era, why did it gradually decline? Or is it really true that there was a close connection between Qin Shi Huang and extraterrestrials, and it was they who helped this emperor create masterpieces that are one of a kind in human history? In my opinion, the answer is quite clear. Another exchange took place, similar to the period of the Sanxingdui civilization. The strange tribe mentioned in the Shi E.G. came down to earth and made a deal with the ruler of the world at that time, Qin Shi Huang. The emperor would have the world and many advanced techniques to keep his country strong and prosperous. In return, the guests requested people, many people. But why did extraterrestrials need humans? What evidence do we have for that? Perhaps you have heard the legend of the mysterious burial of Qin Shi Huang. Let's look back at the very suspicious construction process of his mausoleum. The process from the start of construction to completion lasted for 38 years, mobilizing up to 700,000 people. According to one record, if a healthy man started building the mausoleum at the age of 20, he would be 60 when the mausoleum was completed. With the average life expectancy at that time, not many people lived to be 60. So it is unlikely that one person would participate from the beginning to the end of the construction process. People from all over would take turns coming to be builders of the mausoleum. Most of them belonged to the despised class in society, mainly prisoners, surrendered soldiers, or landless peasants. For such destitute people, if they disappeared, no one would notice. This was certainly a suitable target to be traded. The legend about the mausoleum says that Qin Shi Huang eliminated all the people who participated in the construction or even knew about its location. So if they were really eliminated, where are the millions of bodies? Hiding such a large number of dead people is completely impossible. The option that they were traded and taken away by extraterrestrials is therefore even more plausible. Perhaps in the early periods, the records of extraterrestrials were quite limited, but the later we go, the more we see the dense appearance of strange objects in China. After the reign of Qin Shi Huang, extraterrestrials were no longer limited in their appearances. Images of them were recorded by both ordinary people, not just rulers. We can find in the poetry of Su Dompa, the most famous poet of the Song dynasty. The story goes that one day, while on a boat to Hangzhou to take up a new official post, Su Dompa was suddenly awakened at 2 a.m. He was very surprised to see a bright ball of fire in the middle of the river. Its strange light flickered and cast shadows on several high mountains, starting the birds. An excerpt from his poem, Visiting Jinshan Temple, describes the incident that night quite clearly. To help you visualize it, I have translated the excerpt according to my own understanding as follows. At dusk, the moon was bright on the river. At the second watch, the moon set, and it was as dark as ink. A light in the middle of the river was like a torch. The birds on the mountain were suddenly startled and frightened. I returned to my room to rest, wondering about the strange sight, whether it was a person or a ghost. It is true that to conclude it was an extraterrestrial based on just a strange light is a bit hasty. However, this is not the only evidence for the appearance of visitors from space during the Song dynasty. In that era, the case of the hat-rim ghost was the incident that made people most suspicious of a strange object from the sky. The hat-rim ghost appeared in Luoyang, also known as the Western capital. In the report sent to the court, the details of the case were mentioned, which made everyone dumbfounded. A monster in the shape of a hat rim flew into people's houses at night and harmed people and kidnapped them. The rumor spread, causing the entire city of Luoyang to close their doors and bolt them at dusk. Only a few brave people formed groups to hunt the monster. Despite the seriousness of the report, the official in charge of Luoyang, the prefect of the Western capital, decided not to investigate the rumors about the hat-rim ghost further. He himself did not believe in ghosts. The prefect thought that after a certain amount of time, the rumor would disappear on its own. However, contrary to his initial prediction, the rumor spread more and more widely, even reaching the court in Kaifeng. After receiving the news, Emperor Zhenzong of Song immediately sent an envoy to Luoyang to investigate. But on the other hand, he took strange actions that fueled the panic about the incident.